We'll move on with a check on some of the top international headlines in the papers today with Clement, who's back again, once again. Nice to see you. You're going to be starting off across the channel in the UK. We're not talking directly about the Brexit, though we will tomorrow, I'm sure. We're talking about Scotland. Nicola Sturgeon, the First Minister, wanting to get her new bid for an independence referendum underway.
That's right. Just as Theresa May is about to begin negotiating her way out of the European Union, she's working hard to keep another one together. And her meeting with Nicola Sturgeon was not all plain sailing yesterday. The front page of the Eye speaks for itself. You see a photo with Theresa May and Nicola Sturgeon, and the headline reads, "The Great British Standoff." The British paper goes on to describe the meeting between the two leaders as tense and challenging for the two leaders. Obviously, this comes just 2 days before Theresa May is due to trigger Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty to officially launch the Brexit process.
All right, and that story making front page news in a couple of newspapers. Not all of them with quite the same angle, though, we can say.
Well, that's right. The Daily Mail was busy coming up with this headline on their front page, which I doubt you'll find amusing. It reads, "Never mind Brexit, who won Legsit?" alongside a photograph of May and Sturgeon wearing skirts. Now, the front page, of course, has sparked outrage on social media, with people calling it sexist and demeaning, and they even used the hashtag everyday sexism on Twitter.
OK, least said about that, the better, I think. Hopefully a bit less sexism in the Scottish newspapers.
That's right. The Herald took a more serious approach, saying that Theresa May is now facing challenges both in Britain and abroad. The British Prime Minister says the Scottish referendum should take place around the end of 2018. That's once the Brexit process is complete. Now, the Herald says that while voters must indeed clearly know where they stand before any vote takes place, Theresa May won't be able to delay the referendum forever, especially if negotiations with the EU fail, or otherwise she will look weak and even lose the support of unionists and other people within the Conservative Party.
All right, good to get those Scottish points of view on this story. This story has also been inspiring a few cartoons. That's
right, I've got 2 cartoons for you today. Let's start with this one in The Guardian. With Theresa May dressed as a mix of Harlequin and Henry VIII.
Goodness me.
She's trying hard to look determined, but you can see in the corner here that Nicola Sturgeon is not impressed.
Indeed.
There's another cartoon in The Independent which I thought was funny. You see Theresa May desperately clinging onto Nicola Sturgeon as she prepares to pull the trigger of a gun which has little bullets with the European flag on them.
Very, very imaginative. I'm sure there are cartoons showing different opinions, but 2 very stark ones there. We'll move on to Russia for our next story. There were some huge anti-corruption protests at the weekend. Quite a lot of people arrested, including the opposition leader Alexei Navalny.
That's right. The Washington Post calls him a savvy and determined Kremlin foe. He's not very well known outside of Russia, in fact, but he's a key figure of the opposition in Russia. In the article, we learn that he first became prominent in 2011 when he helped to bring tens of thousands of protesters into the streets of Moscow to protest against allegations of fraud in the 2011 parliamentary elections. Navalny himself has been accused of embezzlement and fraud. He was convicted in 2013, but the European Court of Human Rights ruled that he'd been denied a fair trial.
And what do the papers say about these protests and what they mean for Vladimir Putin?
Well, The Atlantic is saying that the reawakening of Russia's protest movement is dealing yet another blow to Vladimir Putin's authority. Now, of course, the Kremlin has fought back, arresting dozens of protesters and tightening their grip on the media. But as The Atlantic says, intimidation and jail sentences are a short-term fix. Something has clearly changed for Putin, and he may now face ever-growing opposition in the future.
You've got the Russian point of view for us as well.
Yes, well, reactions in Russia are mixed. The left-leaning Komsomolskaya Pravda says protesters are ridiculous. They're falsely claiming to represent the people when in fact they're a threat to the people and to national unity. The Nezavisimaya Gazeta disagrees, saying that Russia's government should understand why young people in Russia are so unhappy. They're facing high unemployment and rising inequality, but the newspaper also says that young people need to learn to be a bit more patient.
All right, so we've just got one final story, a bit of a lighter note, and certainly is of interest to all of us here on the breakfast programme here at France 24. A study that reveals that being sleep deprived at work is as bad as being drunk on the job.
That's right. I guess this is bad news for all of us journalists, especially those working in the early morning hours. Experts at the Harvard Medical School found that sleep deprivation is a health and productivity killer.
Goodness.
They write that the negative effects of sleep deprivation are so great that people who are drunk outperform those lacking sleep. They also give some advice to help you sleep better. That includes waking up at the same time every day and not sleeping on the weekend. Well, that won't be easy for a lot of people, and certainly not for me.
I think you're certainly allowed a good nap this afternoon after your efforts on the press review. Thanks very much, Clément Bonnereau there, looking through the international newspaper headlines.